What does Shift at Midnight hide from the player off camera and behind the scenes? Shift at Midnight is a game where the player is tasked with managing a small gas station in the late hours of the night. They'll need to stock shelves, ring up customers, and, oh yeah, identify and destroy doppelgängers that are posing as humans. This game is dark in more ways than one, and a lot awaits us in this horror-filled experience, along with things the player normally wouldn't see. Like what's going on within these spider monsters that eventually invade our store. And how about the entity in the woods you can never see up close? It's going to become quite the fever dream here, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at it all as we clock in for our Shift at Midnight. Starting up the game, we'll find ourselves being dropped off by a bus, which I tried chasing down at first, but quickly gave up. At our place of work, we can see some interesting graffiti on the building, which will make more sense later, along with all these tokens you can collect. They can be used to buy cola from a vending machine as stated. There are quite a few of them, but I only ever used one during my entire playthrough, as the bottles are merely used for a distraction later in the game. Anyway, we have a to-do list that we must complete before proceeding. Seems like regular tasks for a clerk, minus having to bag up limbs and mop up all the natural pasta sauce, but a normal day for this employee of the month nonetheless. Once completing all these tasks, which also includes stocking some products in the store, we'll have to read these instructions on how to spot a doppelganger. In short, we're looking for human responses, as we need to weed out any non-humans that dare step foot in our store. While reading this, an officer will enter the store as he grabs some things and approaches the counter. This entire interaction acts as a tutorial in a sense, as we're informed on how to scan IDs, use the computer, and how to detect non-humans by verifying their appearance. Sending the sheriff on his way after his teachings will prompt the next customer to enter the store, being our first true test. Scanning Miss McCree's ID, you can see that all seems to be normal, as she doesn't appear to be a non-human. The next customer, however, had, well, a very unofficial looking ID, as it appears that the creature just wrote the information on a piece of paper with a crayon. So I grabbed my weapon and boom. So quick note on my first playthrough, I was not expecting them to explode into giant, meatballs, so that definitely caught me off guard. Rushing to clean up the mess I had just made, the next customer was already inside shopping. And that's when I realized that they don't mind the Chef Boyardee they'll lay about after a kill. Regardless, she ended up being an imposter as well, given her ID had a different occupation compared to what she was stating. This resulted with her fleeing the store as I chased her out and gave her a boom 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 and took her money. Glorious customer service. Let's go back now and take a closer look at everything we just went through though. So before starting the game, we have this main menu area, which we can actually examine more closely. It's interesting to see how it works from afar, as we can see how it's the entire landscape that's moving and not the bus. This creates the illusion that the bus is driving down the road. Coming in for a closer look, we can see that the bus is unoccupied, which is not surprising in the slightest. Nonetheless, here we are, making our way to Doppelganger Land. I was able to mess with the model of the bus, as I essentially turned it into a stretch limo. The seats in here basically become lounges because of this. This VIP only rides in style to work. I ended up shrinking the bus too, leaving us with a little floating bus, along with the headlights shining in all directions now. Miss Frizzle would be disappointed, as there really wasn't much else I could do with the bus. Aside from how we see the background is placed behind the landscape, there wasn't much else to explore here in the main menu area. Moving on, as we start the game now, we'll see that we, the player, are, well, basically we're playing as a large pill. It's quite funny to see from this perspective and think that this is what the NPCs are interacting with, although this is pretty common in games. When the sheriff showed up though, I had to get a closer look at his mouth as he talks, because it was definitely distracting during my initial playthrough. Not to mention the gibberish we'll hear, in which all the NPCs speak. Take a listen. No, officer, I'm not under the influence of any questionable substances. As Pillman, I am the questionable substance, given life and a gun. We can watch the sheriff take his leave after his purchase, as he'll walk out to the road like so, and eventually disappear. This can absolutely be observed through normal gameplay as well, as you can clearly see. As a matter of fact, all the NPCs that leave the store will end up doing this. At this point, I tried catching a glimpse at where the following customers were spawning once finishing our business with the present customer. You'll see that it's as soon as we accept the transaction that the next customer will be dropped in right outside. As you can see, our first imposter floating here. This is because I froze the game, but at this point I decided to give the nurse a power-up mushroom, which resulted with her walking in place at the front entrance of the building, essentially getting her stuck. I guess we'll just have to see how long she stays here. It's now time to deal with Nathan Calloway though, as we prepare to blast him to bits. Here, we can see how it occurs in slow motion. As we shoot the creature, the model will disappear, with the chunks appearing immediately as they grow in size and begin to flail about. It's definitely bizarre to watch in slow motion. Overall though, it does make for a nice looking explosive death when playing normally. No one messes with Pillsbury, savior of midnight. Of course, business continues on as usual, but we are aware that this next customer is also non-human. I was going to give her the nurse treatment and let her be stuck in here with us, but was more inclined at this point to see if her size would affect the way she explodes once being taken out. Taking the first shot in slow motion, you can hear her pleading for her life. You'll get no sympathy from me, you imposter. Taking her out with the second shot, I was having a hard time deciding on whether or not the parts were bigger, seeing as they are abnormally large to begin with in comparison to the models. Doesn't appear to have changed them though. Let's push on and continue with the game. We're now going to get a visit from this truck here that's making a drop-off. So I quickly cleaned the place up and then opened the garage for the truck. There's no driver, which is reassuring, and it'll just take off after dropping off all the supplies. The supplies consist of boards, coil spring foot traps, and explosives? Glorious. It's at this point though that the phone will begin to ring, which we'll want to answer. It's a person claiming to be down the road from our store, and they state their car won't start. So they need assistance. Sure enough, there is a car just down the road, and when approaching it, a guy will jump out of nowhere and begin chasing us. Immediately running back to the store will grant us safety though, as the entity that was chasing us is gone, as stated. The next customer will come in, with everything appearing to be back to normal at this point. Upon questioning, I determined that this customer was human and sent him on his way. The next customer was odd, given that they look like Michael Jackson in tactical gear. However, he checked out on my end as well, so I completed the transaction. Unfortunately, this is where I screwed myself over. I tried speaking to him again right before he vanishes, and he started talking to me and then disappeared mid-conversation. This, in turn, soft locks the game. So take note, don't do this, unless you want to start the game over. Restarting from the beginning and warping back to where we were, our bus will show up at this point, as we're able to complete the shift by boarding it. We'll get an end of night report as we take on a new night at our little store. Let's take another gander at everything we just went through though. When the supply truck shows up, we can see that it, in fact, is completely empty, with the supplies nowhere to be seen. There's actually an obscuring barrier that's used here, which I found to be clever. This makes it so the player can't see the objects loading in as they're dropped off into the store. The truck will leave the area, and just like the bus, will drive down this road, where it eventually disappears. In a similar manner, the car with the aggressive caller will just appear on the road. Of course, the first thing I tried involved taking this fool out with our .45. I felt pretty confident that this would take care of the problem. It's at this point though that I realized that this is the same entity that came into our store earlier, posing as Nathan Calloway with their Benchwarmers crayon-drawn license. This thing has come back for vengeance, and as you can see, we cannot kill it this time around. I tried the Tiny Man approach with my next attempt, hoping that it would deter the entity from being able to hit me. This absolutely did not work, as it continued to destroy my tiny world. I never died at this part prior, so when I saw these eyes that appear for a brief moment during the death sequence, it caught me off guard, and I thought I was just looking at my reflection on the monitor. Anyway, I continued to try and find a way to stop this creature as I laid a trap down this time. When our crazy friend comes after us though, we can actually see that he'll spawn underground, as he'll make his way up and out with his impressive leapfrog skills, making for a goofy entrance. As far as the trap goes though, it unfortunately didn't work. Unglorious. This guy just needs to take his vitamin for the day, and we're clearly looking the part. Rest in peace. I did, however, manage to get this guy stuck on the gas station as I made him much bigger, making for a silly sight. Sadly, there wasn't anything else interesting that I could do with him at this point. We can see how he disintegrates as we enter the store though, which explains why I couldn't find him before. Immediately following that, you can see how our next customer drops in as the car disappears shortly after. At this point, I continue making the customers large to keep them in the building, but realized that they're just going to disappear soon, seeing as we're nearing the end of the shift. So after messing around with the boards, I released them as they then left the property in a synchronized fashion. The end of the night report screen is basically the main menu area in the background, if you hadn't already noticed. but when switching cameras, you'll see that it's what I believe to be just a video playing on loop in the background, as I'm still at the gas station. You'll see that once we hit the next shift button, the bus and our character will just appear at the bus stop too, as we're ready for our next shift. Let's carry on as we normally would though. It's our second night shift, and it's time to serve some customers. Upon entering the store and coming back to read the midnight news, we'll hear the first customer of the night entering. Let's just say, given his demeanor, I definitely kept my guard up. Turns out that he, is just a drunk, as it becomes more evident as we interact with him. Deeming him human, I complete the transaction as our next customer comes strolling in. They surprisingly set items down on the counter that clearly didn't come from our store. Looking at the ID, I began to realize that we're dealing with some trouble here, as they do not appear to be the same person as the one on this ID. So I cautiously drew the pistol, and pop! However, it was here that things got odd, and I believe I sort of glitched the game in the process. The next customer comes in, but I quickly observe that he's holding a weapon himself. So I immediately grabbed mine, as I didn't even allow him to get a word out before attacking. The robber yells at us that it's a fake weapon, and that he's sorry, but then proceeds to say, "Do you like your life?" I believe he was supposed to say that first. It's probably because I shot him so quickly that the dialogue was disrupted. And then he proceeds to hilariously slide out of the store. It happens so fast, as he continues on with telling us to fill a bag with money as he's leaving. He must have been wearing body armor or something too, because he took quite a few shots before exploding. Needless to say, I don't think that's how that interaction was supposed to go. Of course, at this point, the next customer proceeds to calmly enter our store, as if none of that just happened. After cleaning up the remains, as I went to throw the bags out, I had a run-in with this guy. I cautiously throw the trash out, and then quickly go retrieve my hand cannon. This weird meat man looking dude will just stand there, but doesn't do anything. However, shooting it causes it to slide off, and out of sight very quickly. If you come around the building, you can see where it slides to, as it stands by the side of the building. I carried on though, as we'll come back to this entity later. Serving the next customer, I realized that this guy looks a lot like Nathan, with the drawn license from before. After questioning though, I deemed Tommy to be legit and sent him on his way, only to find the same exact freaking person walking to the store as the next customer. Being utterly confused at this point, I just eliminated this Tommy as the supply truck arrives for another drop-off. But it's now time to turn back the clock and check this all out a little closer. Venturing back into the store with our Pillsbury self, we're going to encounter the drunk man again, as he carelessly walks through Mom's spaghetti. I continue with my same antics, as I give Mr. Conroy a mushroom power-up to keep him in the building. Perhaps we'll see if the game can contain the remaining customers within. I do the same with the Jade Sinclair imposter, as it creates quite the silly background, as the robber proceeds to hold up the store. His dialogue makes a lot more sense now, given that I didn't blast him right away this time around. I thought I was going to be able to make him stay, but shooting him caused him to begin limping, which allowed him to slip out the front door. Focusing on Tommy number 1, I noticed something on the wall in front of him. Upon taking a closer look, well, it's Tommy's lips on the wall. I believe this is because the lips are a decal being projected onto the surface. That's my guess anyways. Adding Tommy number 2 to my collection of prisoners follows with a supply truck arriving. Something that's funny that you don't need mods for is if you act quickly and get in front of the truck before it leaves, you can actually let it take you away, as it eventually pushes you through the out-of-bounds barrier. So we are free to walk around now in this off-limits area. However, without mods, I imagine your exploration out here will be fairly limited though. Not to mention it's pretty dark out here too. You can ride away within the truck as well, by hopping in the back of it before it shuts, but this won't break you out of bounds, as you'll just slide out of the truck once hitting the out-of-bounds barrier. Still funny to hitch a ride though, but let's go take a closer look at this meat man that's hanging out on the side of the building. Coming over here, we can see how it simply slides along the side of the building when shooting it. I couldn't find the name of this model, but as you can see, it's a meat monster. Looking even closer though, you can also see that it's a similar model in comparison to the Tommy model, which was interesting. You can even see the pants that this model has on as well, despite the material being applied weirdly. Unfortunately though, I wasn't able to do much with this creature outside of what you've already seen. So on that note, let's continue on as we normally would. Following the drop-off, our next customer is the sheriff again, as he basically praises us for our service. After the heartfelt talk, this happens. So the sheriff's dead, and this thing that just strolled in is seeking gasoline. Oh, and it also presented the sheriff's ID to us. Very convincing. Naturally, I attempted to take it out, but as I attempted to shoot it, the screen goes red as I'm informed that I let one creature escape. End result, it has shifted forms, and will arrive in 60 seconds. So I laid more traps and boarded up the front door as I ran out of time. I then hid in one of the vents, and eventually saw this spider-like creature wandering about the store. Resembling the drawing on the outside of the building, I feel like I had a decent setup with the traps and all here, which resulted with the creature getting damaged a lot, as it eventually fled the scene after a decent shootout. With the danger now gone, the bus will arrive, as we're now able to leave. Forgetting this was a demo, I was, for a brief moment, surprised to see that I reached the end of it, concluding the playthrough. It's time to take a final close look at everything we had just gone through, and also mess it up a bit. So with the truck just leaving, we'll once again see how the sheriff will load in, as he makes his way into our store. You'd assume that he must have a lot of questions running through his head as he enters this fever dream-like scene. I again broke the dialogue by talking to these Tommies as the sheriff attempts to talk to us though. Take a listen. Did you get all that? My main goal here at this point is to try and save the sheriff from his fate. So I enlarge his model as well, which followed with me noticing that his mouth is now gone. Bringing him back down the size, you'll see it comes back, and you can also see how it overtakes his face when shrinking him in size. At any rate, I cash him out, thinking I have saved him by keeping him in the store. But the sheriff's death scene proceeds, with our new terrifying friend loading in. I didn't catch it in my first instance, but coming back to do it again, you'll see how the sheriff will just explode, regardless if he's in or outside the store. Unglorious. Sorry, Sheriff. Anyway, I had to replay the game to get this particular shot, and in the midst of it all, this happened. It's probably because I sped the game up to get to this point quicker, but now we have multiple Tommies along with the sheriff, as they try to figure out whose turn it is at the counter. I also killed the sheriff at the very beginning of the game this time too, but as you can see, he's here anyway. Actually, during this instance alone, I killed everyone, minus the robber, and as you can see, this allows you to still complete the game. You'll just have a bad rating doing it this way, but nonetheless, you can complete the game as a nice cold killer. So allowing our extremely dehydrated friend to leave also prompts the bus to arrive, which resulted with the whole red screen sequence. And now the giant spider is on its way, which spawns outside the bus when the timer hits 0. Sadly, there wasn't much I could do with this primary spider, as it's called in the files, but you can see how the drunk guy that we encountered before is the poor victim that this spider has taken over. At least he's not sober for this experience. It's fairly easy to avoid while fighting it though, as it can't see the player and can only hear them. In my other instance, I ended up having 2 of them spawned in, but it really doesn't change much, outside of needing to use more bullets. Once completing the game though, we'll be at this screen, where we can see the bus once again driving in the background. Like the main menu area, this is also explorable with the camera. However, it's only during this scene that we can actually come in closer and see that all the shelves and products are gliding along the landscape here, as they are fixed in place like the bus. We can see our Meat Man friend too, just chilling, which is interesting to see, especially since we can sort of see it in normal gameplay. On that note though, I'd like to finish this adventure in the memory of the sheriff, as I attempt to have a policeman's ball which will be held in the store. Take a listen to all the cop stories they were sharing with one another. It began getting out of control at this point, which prompted me to try to get them all to leave. It was definitely a chaotic scene, and the game was beginning to struggle, but I'd say the ball was a success. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this alternative look at the Shift at Midnight demo, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers!